The medicinal use of chaga dates back to at least 1000 BCE by the Khanty people in Siberian rituals and medicine. It was used by shamans or healers that believed chaga could help one attain a long life. You'll primarily find chaga in the Northern Hemisphere, where there's an abundance of native birch trees. In North America, indigenous people use chaga to carry coals because it burns slowly. However, they probably had a lot more uses for it. That information's just been lost, which is unfortunate. So we're here in the beautiful southern mid-coast of Maine. It's a late February day. Good time to go out looking for some chaga, so let's see if we can find some. Primarily, chaga grows on birch trees. You can find it on other trees. We generally don't suggest you harvest from other trees. That's pretty under-researched. The edibility and safety of consuming them, we're not totally sure about, so we try to stick with just the birches. So as we're looking for a mature forest, we want to, just keep our eyes open as we're driving around and exploring. The habitats we're looking for, I often find a lot of old birch trees in ravines and gullies, places that are sometimes a little harder to log. This place is really nice out here because it hasn't been used for a while. It's protected land, it's public land, and it hasn't been cleared in a while. So there's a lot of mature forest to look at. And there's a great little trail right here. So we're gonna stop here and get out and take a look and see what we can find. And so when we try to identify chaga, we're gonna be looking for sort of like a canker, a burl on the tree itself. Some people compare it to a lump of charcoal. It does kind of look like that. This time of year, I really like looking for silhouettes. They stand out really well against the snow. It's very high contrast, and they're very dark. So we're gonna keep our eye out for big birches like this, and we're just gonna keep walking, and let's see if we can find something. So I'm moving slowly, and I'm scanning around the forest, and as I looked over here, nicely silhouetted against the snow, there's a really nice chaga growth. So let's take a look and see if it's any good. So you can see we've got this really big kind of conk kind of growth here. It looks like charcoal on the outside. It's a little crumbly and a little orange when you get inside of it. And usually we don't find chaga growing on dead birch trees. Usually that means the chaga is already dead. They grow together over time, so they're both quite slow growing. This one, it's on a dead tree. It's possible that this tree died somewhat recently, and so we can take a look inside this chaga and see if it's any good to harvest. So to harvest chaga, I really like using a pruning saw. This is a pole saw. It makes for really nice clean cuts, and it helps us harvest only the amount of chaga that we want. Whereas if you were to use a hatchet or a hammer, you might just rip off a bunch of the bark with it too. So we're gonna take a look and see if this is, a chaga worth harvesting, if it's orange inside. And yeah, let's start cutting. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, this is maybe a little darker than a chaga that we would want to harvest. I'm sure it's still great, sure it still tastes great, but generally we want something a little more vibrant and orange inside, and maybe we can find a really good example of that if we keep looking. So as we look at this tree, I can see a lot of things that look like chaga to maybe the inexperienced eye, but are not chaga. These shelf mushrooms right here, often growing on old or dead birch trees, and chaga is never gonna make a shelf. And it's gonna have kind of a cracked exterior, and it's gonna have that orange color underneath. And as I can see, I look at this, they just break right off. It's not orange, doesn't look like cork. And so another thing that often tricks people up, and me all the time, especially from a distance, is chaga has sort of a jagged outline and a silhouette. And you can see, looking down here, that's kind of got a jagged outline and silhouette, and it's dark. And so it's pretty easy to see something like that from a distance and be like, whoa, there's a huge chaga. And then you start getting closer to it and you realize it's just a peeled away piece of bark. And there's a great specimen right there on this birch tree right here. see it's got a very kind of strange, cankerous growth that seems random. And that's one of the key things we're going to be looking for when you look for chaga. A study in China using cultivated chaga found that after they inoculated birch trees, over the course of a 9-year study, the largest chaga they were able to harvest was 9 centimeters. Puts it at an average growth rate of less than 1 centimeter a year. So as we look at this, we can say, this is a pretty old chaga. It's been here for a while. There's a lot of concern about over-harvesting of chaga, like there was of American ginseng. And American ginseng was indeed over-harvested by foragers in the United States. It's got a very, very long life cycle. It takes about 30 years to reach harvestable maturity. And the act of harvesting it removes the entire plant. So the regenerative capacity of it is severely reduced. Now, when we work with chaga, we're not talking about a plant life cycle, we're talking about a fungal life cycle. And since this is the sclerotium, this is the storage vessel, an energy vessel, if you will, this is actually not a spore-bearing surface. So no part of this is actually going to be producing spores to make new chaga. And so by harvesting this, we're actually not limiting the ability of chaga to disperse itself across an ecosystem. And so we want to be conscious when we harvest. We want to try to minimize the effect of being a human in the woods. You know, you don't want to leave a big mess right next to a trail. And you want to be conscious. You want to, be walking around in a place, and if you only see one chaga, make an assessment. Do you want to harvest this chaga if it's the only one around? I've seen several chagas out here today, so I feel very confident about harvesting this and it being just fine. So looking at this piece of chaga, you can kind of see the very clear kind of charcoaly look on the outside. It's kind of scabby, you can kind of scrape it off. And then as we look on the piece that's on the inside, the vibrancy of this color is going to tell us a lot about the vibrancy of the chaga itself and its effectiveness and use medicinally, which is why we're harvesting it. All right, so here's our chaga, and chaga is notoriously hard and strong. So I've always found that it's so much easier to break it up when it's fresh, like the day you harvest it. And you can just smash it into little pieces, and then it's fine to dry then. But if you go through the process of drying it and then breaking it up, you're going to have a really hard time. So I like to break it up now. I like to break it up into really as small of chunks as I can. You really want to maximize that surface area. And for this process, I'm going to use wood cutting board in the back of a little axe. And so you just hold it gently. We're just going to give it and this feels like a pretty good consistency. You know, if I had maybe a meat grinder or something like that, I could smash this up a little finer. Another really good method is to put it in like a pillowcase or something and then hit it. I like to have it, small enough. The smaller it is, the better surface area, the better extraction. Some of the corkier stuff in the middle, you can kind of start breaking up with your hands, especially this fresh stuff because it's quite spongy. It's kind of hard to show that, but it does break apart really quite easily. And we're just under a boil, so I think we're ready to start adding some chaga. This is looking good. Seems like the right amount of chaga, a good amount of water, the temperature seems right. Now, all I'm gonna do is just wait until it's rich, and then I'm gonna sit out here and enjoy a cup of chaga by the sea. been about 30 minutes. Seems like the fire is doing a really great job at keeping this chaga where we want it. So let's take a look and see what kind of darkness it's at. And that's looking real nice. That's looking like a cup of black coffee right there. And that's what we're looking for. So I'm just gonna ladle some up. Now chaga is really great just as it is, but if you wanna have a real classic Maine treat, go with a little half and half or cream or your milk alternative of choice. Maple syrup. Cheers.